beautifully. Yes.
Jason, you mentioned that you started the script 7 years ago, and obviously you've had a couple films come out in between then, Thank You for Smoking and Juno. Does that mean you put this on the back burner for a while and then do Thank You for Smoking? How does the timeline work?
Yeah, the timeline is that no one would make Thank You for Smoking. And so I started looking for something else to write and direct, and I found this book, fell in love with it, I started writing it. And then out of nowhere, a millionaire, one of the creators of PayPal, who had sold PayPal to eBay for $1.5 billion with his partners, decided he wanted to make movies. He read my script, he got it from a friend, and called my agent and said, hey, I'd love to make this movie, and he wrote a check for $6.5 million and made Thank You for Smoking. And all of a sudden I wasn't writing Up in the Air anymore. And I made Thank You for Smoking, went back to writing Up in the Air, and then Juno came to my life, and it was just this irresistible screenplay that I knew if I didn't direct I would regret for the rest of my life. The interesting thing was that I basically finished the screenplay after Juno, and about 5 years in I basically got to the end of the script, having never gone back and reread what I'd been writing. And as I read from start to finish, I watched myself grow up. Over the course of the 6 years that I wrote the script, I became a professional director, I bought a home, I got married, I became a father, and I watched myself in the first act be kind of a cynical guy in his 20s who was really just a satirist, and then over the 6 years, I don't know, I became, I think, a bit more sophisticated as a writer, but I also realized what at least was important in my own life, and that really changed Ryan's journey as I continued to write.
I think another question, just one that goes back to you. Logistically, it must be an interesting movie, because I mean, I think you actually did shoot in public places a fair amount, didn't you? And what about for the actors there? Because I mean, in actual airport lounges and so on, I mean, tell us a bit about, because I think something like 20 cities on screen that we see, but clearly you didn't go to 20 cities. Can you, what a jigsaw it must have been to film, I guess, for both sides of the camera?
Yeah.
Do you want to? For instance, when you had what we called a wobbly, was that actually in an airport?
Well, it was actually a hotel. It was a hotel lobby. And it was a little uncomfortable. I guess there weren't that many, because it was a hotel, we could sort of shut down the lobby. There weren't very many looky-loos. But it was still just the space and the extras, and even though they're part of the film, you don't know them. And it was, it's still sort of embarrassing. But I think more than, on that particular day, it was less about other people, it was just more about the space and feeling like very, like in the middle of, I wanted something to grab onto. It was a very uncomfortable day.
Vera, for you,
well, for me,
these environments?
These environments, for me, it was most often closed or controlled sets. I mean, what was most amusing for me was to see the fanaticism that George attracts. I mean, that was overwhelming and so odd. I mean, for me, no one ever knows who I am. They always think I'm a producer on the film. But watching George have to deal with that, and him having just to simply open a door and close it, and then there's a standing ovation that goes blocks and blocks. Yeah. Peeking his head out, and he's so gallant and gracious, and he takes his bow. But I didn't feel that it impeded any of the work.
Jason, the actual nuts and bolts of this, I mean, is it kind of even more dashing about to get in and out of these places?
Oh, it's a total pain in the ass. No, shooting at airports is very difficult. We shot in 4 international airports. And they gave us actually a fair amount of access, and because American Airlines was our partner in this film, basically our trade was that they were our airline, and they gave us access to all their check-in gates and as well as their departure gates. But still, all the actors had to go through security every day when on the way to set. And they would, I think they would on purpose put George through as much security as humanly possible. I'm surprised he didn't get pat down every time he went through. And you can't bring our own food in there. We have to bring in our own electricity. We have to wire from our generators through an airport. It was really tricky. The greatest moment for us was probably shooting in the TSA, which is the American think it's the Travel Security, something Security Administration. I don't know what it stands for, but it's basically going through security. And we're the first film to actually shoot in the real thing. Usually if you see that in a movie, you're looking at metal detectors that were thrown in a convention center hallway or something. This is the real thing, and all the people on camera were real TSA security people who volunteered their time. That was exciting.
And they were really picky about what they would and did and didn't want to do on screen. Like, the way that they stamp, they like cross off the name, like it was, you had to like talk this woman into crossing off the name and then stamping the thing or something. She was just like, well, I don't wear gloves. You wanted her to wear the blue gloves, and she was like, oh, we don't wear gloves. And her supervisor had to come over and tell her it was okay.
That's good, yeah.
Question for Anna. Obviously, your character has her views of love and life sort of deeply challenged in this film. I just wondered, did it affect your views on those in any way? Was it hard to resist them when someone as seductive as George Clooney is trying to lure you to the lone wolf side?
I think, obviously Natalie has really specific ideas about what she wants and what she expects, and I don't have many of those same ideas. So I know that there are things that I want and expect from life that I won't get and, refuse to accept just yet. But her views on love are not my views on love.
Yes, yes, you've got the microphone, I think.
I've got a question for Vera. In the scene where, pretty much the nude scene, was that really you? And if it was, how comfortable were you with it?
I had shot this when I had about 6 pounds more chunk on my badunk-dunk. I was pregnant, and I did do the scene, but I think my bottom had become too large. I didn't think so. I think that's a question for Mr. Reitman, because I did attempt to do the nudity, and I got to certainly choose my body double, and I thought Jason did a good job of selecting someone who's pretty accurate. I mean, Tish has been in many films so far.
I studied those films frame by frame to make sure that it would be an exact representation. I'm a very specific director. Both actresses will tell you that.